All right, let's get started this morning. You may notice this box here, and it just seems like it was fitting. I went to my son-in-law's the other day, and this was in his doorway, and I asked him what he was doing, and he bought my daughter, Brittany, an elliptical for her birthday last week. And so I was like, oh, that's perfect. You know, we kind of come from a family that works out, not me, but the rest of my family that works out. I don't put too much effort into it. I go in spurts. Anyways, and so she, even though she's been married for, I think, a couple years now or something, she still comes over every day and uses our elliptical. So knowing she's going to have a baby, he was trying to be the good husband, bought her elliptical, and it was in there, and it was in the box. And so it was a gift that she wanted, right? But you know how it goes with gifts that you may want, especially exercise equipment. You know how that usually works out. Like, you want the gift because you know that there's some benefits that come with that gift. However, just because you got the gift doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to receive all of the benefits of having received that gift. Somebody know what I'm saying? Like you could have received this as a gift, and that's good, but you can receive a gift into your life, and if you're not careful, though you wanted to see the benefits of it, it's like the purpose of it has changed over time, and it's quite possible that it changed over time because it lost its newness. The excitement of getting a gift, the joy of having received that gift into your life. And so it's kind of lost that newness, and it sort of, loses its purpose over time. Though it was still created for a purpose, it's kind of misplaced its purpose. And so, in a sense, you still have the gift, and that's good, and it'll always be a gift to you. However, in order for the gift to work, you've got to work the gift, right? And so, maybe over time you've decided, well, it's working because it's sitting in the basement, and we got boxes stored on it, and we're hanging clothes from the handlebars. It's still serving a purpose. But really, the purpose it was created for has been lost because it's not being worked. That there's a lot of people that I'm probably speaking to if you got exercise equipment in your home, right? And there may come a time where you're like, what, I really need to do something. I need to put that thing to use. It was a gift that was given to me, and, I'm not really seeing any benefits out of it. It's nice that it dries clothes, but, maybe there's something I can do on it. So you begin to learn, and you begin to, maybe read the directions and put the thing together. And, whatever it might be, and you start to work out on it, and you realize that, there's something that you can get out of it in the fact that you don't go backwards. So, for example, I remember years ago I was working out at the Dave Smith gym, and this friend of mine, his wife, would usually be there when my dad and I were there, and we knew her, and so I think I probably said something to her about working out, because she'd jump on the treadmill for like 30 minutes, and she would run at like 12 miles an hour. I swear, like, she's just over there, and then jumps off, and boom. And so I said something to her, I can't remember what it was, and she goes, the only reason why I even do that is because I like to eat, right? Like, that affords me the ability to eat the things that I want to eat. Don't kid yourself. It's like maintenance, right? Sometimes we do things simply for the maintenance of life. Right? Like, I don't really care to get ahead, but as long as I'm maintaining, like, how many of us just want to hang on to life by a thread, right? But you never go through the effort to actually see any real benefits. It's nice that you do enough to not go backwards in life. And so you're maintaining, but don't you ever want to move ahead in life? And so then eventually you decide, oh, maybe I'll start putting a little more time on that thing. And you begin to work out. And when you realize that it does make you feel a little bit better, then you start to get excited. And and maybe you decide, I'm just going to do it for the benefits for myself. And you start receiving those benefits. You start working that thing, and you start to feel better about yourself. But maybe you like it so much that you decide, it's helped me out so much. I want to use the gift that I've been given and the benefits that I've received to inspire other people. And so maybe you start an elliptical class. And you start taking people on these elliptical rides to help them receive the same benefits that you've received. And you begin to coach and you begin to lead other people in the knowledge that you've received. And as silly as that may sound, I looked online and they actually have elliptical classes. And so, you can go to an elliptical class, like a spin cycle class or whatever it might be. And then if you really like it, you can really shine and become an athlete because they have the elliptical world championships. You don't even know when you receive this where this thing was going to take you. Once you begin to work it out, it might take you in places you never possibly imagined. And that's kind of how it is in our relationship with Christ. And that's where Paul is taking us in this next set of scriptures in our series, Joy in the Journey. Not before the journey and after the journey, but being able to find joy in the journey. As we read through the book of Philippians chapter 2, we're just going to look at verses 12 and 13 today. And these verses, Paul starts off with the word therefore. If you were here last Sunday, we kind of discussed this real quick. Anytime you use the word therefore at the beginning of a paragraph or a sentence, you've got to ask, why is it therefore, right? And so this is the third time that he's used this word in this chapter, and he's continuing to connect the previous thoughts into a future thought that he's about to explain to us. And so if you weren't here, the previous thought that we looked at last week, he just described this tremendous doctrine about who Jesus is and what he accomplished while on the face of the earth that took place within like the first 20 to 30 years of Jesus' death on the cross. So like historically, it's evidence of the proof of the Bible and what the early church believed. But in that doctrine, it talked about the humility of Jesus, that he was able to empty himself to a place of walking in humility throughout life in order to accomplish great things. Humility wasn't a weakness, it was actually the strength that allowed him to be able to do something that nobody else had done for thousands of years that came before him to walk out this perfect life. And so Paul's saying, if you understand the strength of humility that Jesus walked in and what he has accomplished for you, then I want you to take that and I want you to apply it to the next thing that I'm going to talk to you about. What is it that Jesus did? You can see this in John chapter 17, verse 4. Jesus is praying right before he goes to the cross, and he's praying to his Father in heaven. He says, I've glorified you on the earth, Father. I have finished the work that you have given me to do. Everybody say finished. So he's finished the work that his Father purposed for him to do. So there was work that Jesus was given. There was a purpose, and he was to finish that. And so Jesus worked out what that was. He finished it. And now Jesus, having worked it out, Paul's saying, I want you to now work out the work that he has set before you. The Bible says that God has given us good works in order for us to fulfill them in our lifetime. Every single one of us has been given these things. And so Paul looks at him and says, just in the way that Jesus worked his out, now I want you to work yours out. That same attitude of humility underlying everything that you're doing, I want you to work it out. He says, therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not only in my present, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation. Everybody say, work out your own salvation. I want this to stick in you. Say, work it out. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure. Today, I'm going to probably maybe spend a little bit more time just teaching this than preaching it. I don't want to break this scripture down in 6 different ways to describe what Paul is talking about here. And point number 1 this morning is that it's not for, but out, meaning you're to work it out. You're not working for. Because in our world, there's several major religions. And every religion but Christianity requires you to work for salvation. It's only Christianity that you can't earn it. You don't deserve it. But because of God's love, he gives it to you anyways, simply by saying, you know what, I'll receive this gift into my life, the elliptical of life, into my life, and there was anything that I did to deserve it. Everything else you got to work for. And there's a difference between working something out and working for something, right? Because to work out something means that you probably already possess that or you have influence over it. That's the only reason you have the ability to work it out. To work for something means that you're working to possess that thing. And the Bible is very clear that we do not, as Christians, work for salvation. Now, the scriptures say in multiple places, Ephesians 2:8, God saved you by his grace. Everybody say grace. When you believed, when you received that gift into your life, and you can't take credit for this because it's a gift from God. Everybody say it's a gift. Romans 11:6, and since it is through God's kindness, it's through his kindness, then it is not by their own good works. It's not by our good works. We can't be good enough in order to receive this. For in that case, God's grace would not be what it really is, free and undeserved. Now, most Christians already know this, but if we're being honest, at times we doubt it. Thinking that we need to work harder because we're not good enough. We've got so many sins in our life, struggles in our life. We're going through challenges in our life. And you get to a place, if you're not careful, that you will begin to even question the gift that's been given to you. Like, am I really saved? Because there's so much stuff going on in my life. And it's good for us to be reminded that is the greatness of what Jesus accomplished with his death on the cross, is that you can't be good enough. There is nothing that you can do outside of receiving the free gift into your life. It's amazing to think, compared to every other religion, that all we have to do is say, Jesus came, he died on the cross, I receive him into my life, and I receive that gift of salvation. And no matter what's going on, you know what, I can still be saved. I've received that gift. However, it's once I've received the gift, the elliptical of life, that the true challenge begins. Will I work it out? And that's what Paul is describing today. Will you not work for, but work it out? Point number 2, work out. Work out in the Greek is one word which means to work fully. To work fully. It's not like you're going to start this thing and you're going to quit it. It's not like you're going to work part way through and then decide, you've done well enough. The idea behind it is that you're going to work it fully, that you're going to finish this thing off. And it's that you're going to shape, you're going to form, you're going to fashion this in order to fit something in life. And we'll sometimes think that this is what God's doing for us, and yet what Paul's saying here is this is your responsibility. It's your responsibility for you to fully work this thing out, for you to be able to finish this thing, to fashion it, to render one fit. Now, don't misunderstand me. We're not talking about working for our salvation. Salvation is the gift that's inside of us. But it's up to you to be able to work that thing out fully in order to have finished that thing. Where am I? 1 Corinthians 6:11 says, and some of you, such as some of you, but you were washed, but you were sanctified. Everybody say sanctified. But you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus and by the Spirit of our God. What is Paul describing here? This idea of working out is the idea of sanctification. And what sanctification means in the original language is to take something that was once profane and dedicate it to God. It's the process of being made holy. And so it's this big Christianese word that most people look at it and they will describe it as there's 3 points to sanctification. The first one is positional sanctification. That is, that you were justified the moment that you received salvation into your life, that free gift. That now the enemy, though he may accuse you, that he can't send you to hell for all of the things that you've done, that Jesus' death on the cross justified you. It's positional sanctification. And then once I've received that positional sanctification, I've been pulled out of the muck and the mire in order to be used for a different purpose. Then I begin what we would call progressive sanctification. And that's the process of being made holy. That's the process of being cleansed. How many know that if I was to have found a treasure buried in the dirt, and I wanted to take that thing and I wanted to put it in the nicest museum in the world, more than likely I wouldn't just pull it out of the dirt as is, having received that into my life, that gift, that treasure, and then immediately brought it to the museum and put it on display. It would have went through a process. Yes, it's now in somebody else's hands. However, in the moment that I take it out, I would probably begin to look at it. I would probably begin to scrape some things off. It's dirty. It's filthy. And I would look at it and I would see, oh, you know what? It has a crack here, or, you know, it's got some hurts. It's got some dings. It's got some habits. It's got some hang-ups. And so before I put it on display, it's going to go through a cleansing process. And so you begin to clean that thing off. You begin to mend some things. You begin to see some things healed. And not only is it getting cleansed off, but in the process of being cleansed off and healed, you begin to put some muscle into that thing, some effort into that thing, and you begin to polish that thing. You begin to shape it and form it to what it was created and purposed to be. And then once you are doing that, it begins to shine. And when it gets to that place of shining, and then you put it on display, everybody can see the shine that's coming forth from what was once a broken treasure. It's been through the process. And then we have what's called perfect or ultimate sanctification, which is the idea that there will come a time where we are perfectly made whole, that we are perfect in God's eyes. Now, throughout the process, the progress of sanctification, we're aiming for perfection. We want to be that, but we will never fully attain that until we are with Jesus in heaven. Perfect sanctification. But it's from positional sanctification that progressive sanctification flows. Now, I know that I'm in somebody else's hands. I know that I have a purpose. And so my progressive sanctification flows from positional sanctification as I look forward to perfect sanctification. Does that make clear sense? Or otherwise, very simplified, salvation with Christ, once I've received that into my life, is the foundation of which I work from in order to become more like Christ as I look forward to being with Christ in the end. So working out is the process of sanctification. That's working this thing out, being cleansed and shaped into the image of Jesus. Now here's the cool thing. Though we're supposed to work it out, we don't have to do it on our own. We actually have a personal trainer that will come beside us and help us in the process. Speak things into us to encourage us to move on. And that's point number 3, talking about works in us. Philippians 2:13, Paul says, "For it is God who works in you." Like he calls you to work it out. Then he says, but it's God that's working in you. If you're not careful, you may think this is contradictory to some extent. So is it us working, or is it God working, or what's going on here? And the answer is both. Because you can't work out of you what's not first being worked in you. And this is the goodness of God. That the Bible says He is constantly working inside of us. He is shaping us. He is forming us on the inside and transforming us from the inside out. So as He's shaping some things in me, I've got to get to a place where I'm able to work those things out of me. Like I got pulled out of the dirt and received salvation. And I've got some hurts from before I was buried in the dirt, or in the process of being buried in the dirt. And so there's some healing that needs to take place. And so part of this process is God's beginning to heal me inside. He's beginning to point some things out. And so I've got to be able to work those things out so it's reflected on the outside, the healing that's taken place on the inside. I've got some sin in my life. I've still got some of that dirt on me. And so God's beginning to work inside of me, convicting me of those things so that I can work those things out so it's reflective that the dirt is not who I am any longer. I've got to work those things. He's put some treasure inside of me. You know that everything that you struggle with in life, God has already given you what you need in order to overcome those things, to be victorious in life. That's what the scripture says. 2 Peter 1:3, by God's divine power, God has given us everything. Everybody say everything. There's nothing missing that you need right now. You don't need another tool in order to be victorious over what is going on in your life, the challenges that you're facing. God has already given you everything that you need for living a godly life, a life that is set apart, a life that is holy, a life that is shining for Jesus. He's given you everything that you already need. That means that when it comes to your spiritual fruit is already inside of you, right? So you may think, oh, God, just give me patience. And God is saying, I've already given you patience when I gave you me. Now you need to learn to work that patience out. God, I've been going through some things and it's just killing me. You know what? How in the world am I supposed to have joy in the journey? I need some joy in my life. Well, you know what? I've already given you joy. It's inside of you, but you've got to begin to work that joy out of you. He's already put the fruit of the Spirit because the Spirit is inside of you and the fruit that goes with the Spirit. When it comes to needing something else, maybe you got to understand you've got some gifts that God has given you that will help you overcome things in life called spiritual gifts. Well, guess what? The spiritual gifts are already inside of you, but are you working those out of you? Like, in order for the gift to work, you've got to work the gift. It's inside of you. The power of God to see His will accomplished upon the face of the earth, the assignments that we have been given, to see healing take place and restoration and deliverance and salvation, all of these things is already residing inside of you. He says, everything that you need is in you. But you've got to have the ability to work those things out of you. So you've received the gift, but are you working the gift? And then it says that you receive these things, all of this, by coming to know Him. Everybody say, know Him. What I want you to understand this morning is that this isn't just about working out a thing. Yes, you need joy. That's true. And you've got to work that out. You've got to learn to work it out. Yes, you might need some peace in your life because of the chaos that's around you. And yes, you've got to learn to work that thing out. But ultimately, this isn't really about working a thing out. It says that we've received all these things by coming to know Him. So ultimately, I don't need to work joy out. I need to work out my relationship with the one who is joy in my life. I don't need to work out peace. I need to work out my relationship of peace with the one who is the giver of peace and is peace in my life. That this has more to do with working out a relationship with the one who's inside of you in order for you to be able to function in the way that He's created you to function, to fulfill the purpose that He's given you in life. So I got to work on a relationship. How many are working out a relationship? Isn't that easy? Because it's nice when you get in a relationship where you don't got to work. Anybody have a relationship like that? You don't have to work for your relationship. You've never had trials or tribulations. What did William say earlier about lying? Everybody has problems in their relationship. No relationship is perfect. Every relationship takes work, right? And so it's good for us sometimes to know where we are in relationship with people in order to help us grow in that relationship. Right? Anybody remember dating? Maybe there's some people here that are. It would be good to know when you think that you're dating somebody that they've put you in the friend zone. Right? Like, you think that, oh, things are going, we're having coffee, we're having fun, we're doing these things, and then all of a sudden, you think that you're making progress, and they're like, oh, no, we're just friends. Well, at least knowing where you are in the relationship helps you move forward. Because at that point, you can either choose to move on to a different relationship that's going in the same direction you are, or maybe that you need to change some things to get you out of the friendship zone and into a more intimate relationship with that individual. It's good to know where you are in relationship. Sometimes you find out in relationship that you're just being used. You're more like a servant to this person. Oh, they want this, they want that, and I'm over there, and I give them everything they need. I fulfill their desires, but there's no reciprocation from them. I'm not receiving anything back. It's good to know when you're in a relationship that you may just be their slave, because then you can decide what you need to do in order to move forward in life, right? But it's also good to know at times that you're valued. And you're valued, somebody may value you because they know how much you value them. Oh, they see how much I care. They value me because they know that I care for them, that I want the best for them. And so they see that I have a desire to help them become a better person, to love on them and connect with them. It's good to know where you are in relationship with people in order to help you grow in relationship. Therefore, if you look throughout the Bible, I'll try and cover this quick. If you've been here for 15 years, you've probably heard me preach this 4 different times. So I'm sorry, but there's somebody here that hasn't heard it. The Bible gives us these covenants. There's several different types of covenants, but I'm going to cover 3 relationship covenants that help you know where you are in relationship with Jesus or with people as individuals in order to help you grow in that relationship. And so when you come into relationship with somebody, typically, if it was a guy and a woman in ancient days, we think that they had a prearranged marriage. That means they would never know anything about each other, and they just got married, and they were forced to get married, and now they've got to work through that. That did happen, but that probably wasn't necessarily just the common thing for everybody, especially in the bigger areas where there was a larger population. A lot of times they did know of each other, and so there might be this desire in order to receive that person into their life, that gift into their life of who that person is. And when that took place, what would happen, and I could show this scripturally, but for the sake of time, if you want to find out these scriptures, I'll give them to you later. The father would go with the son, and they would go and they would knock on the door of the house of the potential bride. And so if the bride wanted to have the potential groom come inside, then they would knock and they would open up the door and they would allow them to come in and they would have a meal together. And so you see this in Revelation chapter 3:20 when it says, behold, Jesus, I stand at the door and knock. If anybody hears my voice and opens the door, I'll come in with him and I will dine with him and he with me. And what takes place when we come into a home and we begin to dine with each other, typically it's the beginning of relationship. It's the building of relationship. And so that's what would take place. They would come in, they would sit down, they would have supper together, and they would go over 4 cups of wine. You see those cups of wine represented when we do Passover as a church. Jesus will have drank those 4 cups of wine when he had Passover with his disciples. And every one of those cups is symbolic of a covenant of relationship that showed growth in relationship. So they would sit down, they'd have the first cup of wine. That cup was representative of the servanthood covenant. Everybody say servanthood. Also known as the blood covenant. So once they came to this agreement and they would drink this cup together, it would mean that they've decided that from this day forward, even if they don't progress any further in the relationship, that they have committed through covenant to serve each other no matter what happens in life. And I want you to understand this morning that this is the first and foundational step of every relationship. I could show you any relationship, whether it's a husband and a wife, whether it's a parent and their child, whether it's your relationship with Jesus. Learning to serve is the first and the most foundational step in any relationship. And in this relationship is where you will learn the basics. Sometimes I just need to know what to do and what not to do. For those who have been married for a while, have you ever went through that with your spouse? You're like, just tell me what to do, or tell me what you don't want me to do, right? I don't even need to know the why right now. All I want to know is what you really want from me, right? Do you know that you go through that in your relationship with Jesus when you first come to know him? Like, you're working out what is right and what is wrong. And you don't really care about the why of what is right or wrong. It's more of like that slave mentality. Just tell me what to do and I'll just do it. And so, you're learning to serve and obey. You're learning right from wrong. You don't need to know the why. And however, the great thing is that when you make a mistake in that, we know that we have the blood of Jesus from his sacrifice, from him coming to serve humanity, to cover us, to repent, and to start over, because the Bible says that his mercies are new every morning. So guess what? In the servanthood blood covenant, our mercies, like God's mercies, are supposed to be new every morning. So it is a daily process of growth. Your friend, your spouse, whatever kind of relationship you're in, your kids, or you as a parent, you know what? The next day starts, your mercies should be new every morning. Like clean slate if you want to have a healthy relationship. You know what? It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. How can I serve you today? Luke 9:23, Jesus says to a group of people, not just his disciples, if anyone would come after me, everybody say anyone. If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Like, Jesus looks at a group of people. This isn't a salvation message that we commonly hear in the church today. And he says, you know what, if anybody wants to do this, you've got to first learn to deny yourself. This means letting go of what you think your hopes are, what your desires are, what your dreams are, of what it is that you want to do. Learn to deny yourself and take that lowliness of mind and pick up your cross. Learn what it means to serve. Learn what it means to sacrifice. Because it's in serving that you sacrifice. So how many know sometimes you don't want to serve? And in order for you to serve, it's a real sacrifice in your life. Like, how many women here love to scrub the toilet at your house? How many men here love to scrub the toilet at your house? How many kids love to scrub? Nobody's raising their hands. Is there anybody that loves to scrub the toilet? No. Oh, come on. So, listen, I don't want to scrub the toilet, but somebody's got to do it, right? So you serve your family by scrubbing the toilet because the toilet's got to get scrubbed. And so you're sacrificing because it's not what you would desire to do if you had a choice. So to serve is to sacrifice, and you pay a price in order to do that. And here's the deal. Because you pay a price in relationship, you're willing to serve, even at times where it's a sacrifice to serve, that you become more invested in whatever it is that you're sacrificing for. You have to pay a price for something, right? You become invested in that thing. And if you've paid the price and you become invested in something, guess what? You are less likely to give up on that thing and more likely to find a way to make it work. I don't want to start over. Right? I've invested into this thing. I've paid a price for this relationship. How do we make this work? I've put too much into it. That's that mentality here. You look at any marriage, and almost every marriage, especially early on, but even in the latter years, most marriages have problems because of selfishness. It'll almost always come back to selfishness because of your desire, because of what you want, that you want it your way, and that you're not willing to be the one to pay the price. You're not willing to be the one to serve, to make the sacrifice. You want the other person to make the sacrifice. And then as you work things out, you get to a place later in life where maybe some things have changed, but I'll guarantee you this, the moment you quit serving one another in a relationship, that relationship is lost. Because somebody's quit serving, and serving is the most foundational step in a relationship. I give my wife all the credit in the world. We cannot be getting along, and the next day, if there's time or whatever, she'll come home hating me. She don't hate me, but you know that mindset. She'll come home like we're still not getting along, and she'll say, "What do you want for breakfast?" Like, you know how much that means to me? Like, she's paying the price, and yet she's still doing something that I don't deserve. She's still serving. And like, we don't want to put ourselves in that place, right? But you know, the moment you quit serving, that is the foundation of any relationship. You can look at it with Jesus. You come, you start to serve Jesus. Same thing, continually serving Jesus. And it's going to build a relationship. Friendships. You know, probably the majority, I can't say every relationship that's a friendship, even in marriage, friendships. But most friendships start through serving. If you have someone that you've seen and they need help doing something, you go over there and you start to help them do that thing, serving them, whether it's a neighbor and they're throwing branches in the back of their truck and you go over and say, "Hey, can I help you throw some branches in the back of your truck and we'll take them to the dump?" Or, you serve together in the military and you didn't know each other before, but you're either serving each other or serving together. In a sense, when you're serving together, you do serve each other. They come out brothers in arms. Like they are strong in relationship because they've learned to serve together. You want to build relationships in the church family? Guess where it starts? It starts, if you want relationships in here, with finding a place to serve in here. Because when you start serving together, you start to get to know each other, and you will move from this serving mindset, I just want to serve somewhere, doesn't really matter why, to all of a sudden I'm developing relationships because I'm serving together with somebody. You see this in Scripture. John chapter 15, Jesus has his disciples, they're following after him. And he says to them, "No longer do I call you servants." Right before they go into the Passover and he goes to the cross, he looks at them and says, "No longer do I call you servants. For a servant does not know what his master is doing." When you're serving, you don't care about the why. I don't need to know why. I just need to know what I need to do, what I don't need to do. It says, "But I have called you friends." So Jesus is transitioning in relationship from his disciples having been servants to now looking at them as they are friends in his life. And so the second covenant is this friendship covenant. It's a salt covenant. And the idea of where salt covenant comes from, you can look at those scriptures and see, but in the betrothal process, they'd have a cup of wine and then they'd have their second cup and they would break bread together. How many know if you want to build a relationship with somebody, what's the next thing that you do besides serving together? You'll often invite each other into each other's homes. You'll share meals together. You'll go out to lunch together. You form relationship around meals. And in the ancient days, they would have salt, which was very valuable in those days. Added seasoning, it preserved things. And they would swap salt, and they would form a lifelong friendship by swapping salt with each other. The only way to break that covenant is to be able to get your granules back out of that person's bag of salt, which was impossible, right? And that this would mean no matter what, we're not just going to serve each other, but we are going to be friends together forever. And what friendship would mean is that, number one, we still serve each other because that's the foundational step. That's a daily thing. And then we add to that the fact that now we're going to start sharing life together. We start doing things together. We start spending time together. And then in sharing life together, there's this another aspect where when you develop a relationship with somebody that you become friends with, there's this protection aspect. That's part of the friendship covenant. Like you look out for your friends, right? And the Bible tells us that love covers a multitude of sins. When you really love somebody and you're friends with them and somebody's got some issues in their life, that you're the first person that's going to cover them. You're going to look out for them. You're going to help provide for them. You're going to help give them a place when they need a place in life, a hand when they need a hand in life, a heart when they need a heart. You're helping to cover them. This goes so far as to, anybody seen the movie Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg? The true story of, I think it was some of our Navy SEALs that were put on a mountain in Afghanistan, and they all got killed, but Mark Wahlberg, he jumps over a cliff, he's getting shot at, and he gets, to a place where he just can hardly even walk. In this village, somebody in the village sees him, and they have to make a decision. Do they leave him and let the enemy kill him, or do they bring him into the village? And they chose to bring him into the village. Mind you, this is a true story. And so by bringing him into the village, then they've brought him into their village, into their family. They begin to feed him and nurse him back to health. And now when his enemies come for him, they have to make a decision. Do they just, the village is going to have to go to war if they keep him, or they can just give the American back. And these people would have gotten along with him if it wasn't for that individual American that they brought into their village. But they chose, because of covenant, because this salt covenant is something that's prevalent in the Middle East. They understand this process, that once you bring somebody in and you've created that covenant with them, that you are going to defend them even if it means giving your life. And so you see in the movie, and if you read the story in real life, they actually fought against other Afghanistan people in order to protect the life of that one American. Like in ancient days, if you brought somebody in and you swapped salt and there was salt between you, then you know what? You're willing to, it doesn't matter if an army's chasing after him, you're willing to give your life for a brother. You're willing to give your life for a sister. So you have this serving, this sharing, this protection that takes place, and then you continue to get to know each other, right? Because if you're close with somebody, whether it's your spouse or somebody outside of your marriage, the more that you're around somebody, the more that you become like each other. Like your quirks become a part of their quirks become a part of your quirks, and that's where we get the expression, birds of a feather flock together. Like that is a true thing. I'll see somebody and they'll have like certain words that they see, and then whoever they're hanging out with, pretty soon you start hearing that person say those same types of words. Like that is a real deal because you begin to rub off on each other. In marriage, that's the same thing. You get together and the idea is you start to learn each other's likes and dislikes. You begin to rub off on each other. Iron sharpens iron, and you begin to work some things out, and you become that one flesh that God designed you to be. No longer two individuals. In your relationship with Jesus, the more you spend time with Jesus, the more you'll become like Jesus. Because you can get into His Word and read His Word. You can spend time in prayer and worship. And eventually, you know what? By spending time with Him, what He likes is going to rub off on you. What He dislikes is going to rub off on you. And pretty soon, people can look at you and they know, oh, you must be a friend of Jesus. Because birds of a feather flock together. I see it in you. And this comes back to, this mentality that life is no longer about having to do something for someone, but that you want to do something with someone. Like, I no longer have to do these things for Jesus. I want to do them because I want to spend time with Him. I no longer have to do these things for my spouse, but I want to do these things because I enjoy spending time with my spouse. It's that change of mindset that takes place. And that through that, you're going to continue to grow in knowledge of each other and maybe even take it to the next step. Because after Jesus called His disciples friends, He dies, He's resurrected. And then what does He do? He goes down to the sea and He cooks them breakfast. He serves them. And they all come and they eat. They hang out together. And then He pulls Peter off to the side. Peter, who had become a friend of Jesus's, but Peter, who also betrayed Him. And He says, Peter, do you love me? Peter says, yes, Lord, I love you. And He's like, feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Tend my lambs. Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Feed my sheep. What's He doing? He's about to ascend to heaven. Jesus has been building His church. He's been expanding His kingdom upon the face of the earth. And He wants Peter to grasp, I need you to move from having just been somebody who served with me to having just been somebody who was my friend, to understand that now you have a responsibility in life. It's no longer about buddy, hang out. But I need you to finish what I started. And so I want you to take care of my inheritance. And he's transitioning Peter's mind from, oh, this is what I helped Jesus do, to, oh, now I have a responsibility to do what Jesus did. And his inheritance is people. Feed the sheep, tend the lamb, feed my sheep. And so he's passing on this responsibility. In ancient days, people would sometimes mark out their property boundaries with worn-out sandals. And so they would do that up until they could get maybe whatever, fences up or something like that. But the sandal became representative of the idea of inheritance. And so you see this reflected in the Bible in Deuteronomy chapter 25. There's a few different places that you'll see it, but specifically in Deuteronomy 25, you'll see where in those days, if a woman was married to a man, children were going to be their inheritance, just like people are God's inheritance. It's more than just things. Though it involves things, it's individuals. And so if her husband were to die, it was the responsibility of the brother of the husband, if there's a brother, to then produce children through his dead brother's wife, so that there could be an inheritance that would carry on in the brother's name. And it was a big deal because if you didn't have children, you were looked at as being cursed in life. And so if the brother refused to marry the woman, then she could go to the city gates where all the elders were in front of people. And it says that she could go down and remove his sandal, which represented the inheritance, and spit in his face. Now, if you remember, women in those days were like property. They really had no rights. So it was a big deal for a woman to walk up to a man in public at the respectable place of the city gates and remove his sandal off of his foot and hack a loogie in his face, saying, because of no inheritance in my life, that you will bear the disgrace of no inheritance. Because inheritance is a big deal. It's coming back to this mindset. Like in the betrothal stage, what are we going to bring into the marriage? What are we going to pass on to our children, to the next generation? It's this, that you have the mindset that you have a responsibility for what you're producing in life. There was probably a time in your life where you didn't really care what you produced in life, but now you've gotten to a place where it matters what you produce in life. That you come to a place in life where you have a responsibility for what you have been given in life. Not just things, but knowledge, experiences, what you've acquired as a whole in life. You now have a responsibility for that. And then the next part of that is you have a responsibility for what you are leaving behind. That's this inheritance mindset. You are now a responsible adult. So like on a farm in the ancient days, you know what? The son of the owner of the farm might go out and serve with the servants, right? He didn't need to know why. He was just out there. Dad wanted him to learn the work. He had to work like a slave. And then eventually, you know what? As he grows and he gets older, he would be like next to his dad, and he would be learning some things about how the farm functions, and we got to replace the roof and all that kind of stuff. And then at some time when the dad's going to pass on, he's going to bring his son in and say, listen, I need you to understand the why. What's behind all of this? This is why we replaced the roof, because there's a building here that you need to make sure that it maintains being able to cover the hay that's inside of it, that's going to produce income for you. And this is how you do the books behind it. And so there's this shift in mentality from servanthood to friendship to now the inheritance or the sandal covenant. And we see this in life. Like in our marriage, Stacy and I, in our early years, she was never this way, but I was all about acquiring things. Like in my 20s, when I was working at Dave Smith's, we would go out with somebody on a summer day in the week, on a weekend, and I would come home, and the next day I would think, you know what? That was so much fun riding jet skis. I think I want to buy a jet ski. honey, can we buy, I think we're going to buy a jet ski. So I'd start looking at prices of jet skis. She'd be like, what are you doing? So you want to buy a jet ski? Yeah, I want to buy a jet ski. And we can afford the payment. So you're going to buy something and make payments on it that you can only ride like maybe 1 or 2 months out of the year. And with your schedule, you might get, a couple weekends out of those months to be able to ride it. Like, that's ridiculous. I'd be like, oh, yeah, right. Okay, so then that winter, we'd go snowmobiling, and I'd come home from my friends. I'd be like, babe, I think I'm going to buy a snowmobile. And so even one time, I brought home a snowmobile just to see how she would react. She's like, so you want a snowmobile that you can only ride in the winter time, and we're going to be making payments on it all year round. Yeah, that makes sense. So then, I went from that to, I want to get a crotch rocket again, and I want to be able to ride. No, you're not going to have a crotch rocket and be able to ride. And so I was all about wanting. I want all the toys in the world. Like, I want to acquire some things in life. To now in life, my wife has rubbed off on me through spending time together. We become one flesh, and I realize it's not so much anymore about what I acquire in life, but what I'm really passionate about in my 40s is what are we passing on? What am I passing on that's of value in this world? And I can promise you this, it's not passing on a jet ski that cost $8,000 and now it's worth $500. It's not about passing on a thing. It's about passing on knowledge and experience to help the next generation start off higher than where we started. It's about what's going to last in life. How are we influencing the next generation? How are we caring for what God considers to be His treasure in life? The only thing that will last in heaven when everything else is destroyed. Just like we grow in the education process, that there's the 12th grade and you may be in 7th grade, so there's a few years to go before you graduate, but you have something to look forward to. You know how to figure those things out. In relationship, it is sometimes good for you to know where you are in relationship with people and with God to help you take that next step in growing together, working out all that God has already given you inside and coming to know Him in a greater and more intimate way every day. Point number 4, mind your business. Everybody say, mind your business. Mind your business. Paul says, as you've always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation. Work out your own. Say, my own. So listen, there's 2 things that I really want us to get here with minding your own business. First, if you've got a business to begin with, then you've got to own that business. It's your responsibility, if you own the business, to grow the business. And what Paul's saying is, just like you obeyed, whether I was here or not, you learned to obey. I want you, whether I'm here or not, to learn to work out your salvation. It was one thing to be a servant, but it's a whole other thing to begin to grow in this relationship. And the reality is, we don't need a Paul there in order to learn to grow in relationship with Jesus. Like, He's given us His Word. We can spend time reading the Bible. We can spend time in prayer. We can spend time in worship. Like, we don't need Paul. We don't need Pastor Corey. We don't need anybody else in our life. Like, if this is our business, then own your business and do what it takes to grow your business, to work out your salvation. Like, that doesn't mean that we don't gather together. But when you are gathered together, guess what? I don't go to a conference somewhere to learn how to make money so that, I can worry about how everybody else is making money. I would go there to get the information to grow my own business. In a sense, you're coming here not for your own salvation, or for somebody else's, but for you to be able to work out how to better your business in life. Own your business, whether somebody's there or not, that you have the ability already to work on your own salvation. And the second thing is this, as you're working out your salvation, it's a whole lot easier for you to grow in your business, your salvation, when you're focused on your own and not on somebody else's. That's how businesses get their growth stunted. Somebody else comes in with a similar business and they're all focused on the other business that came into town, not focusing on what they're doing to make their own excellent. You know that shortly after, Jesus pulls Peter aside and asks him, do you love me, do you love me, do you love me? And transitions him from friendship covenant in order to the mindset of the inheritance covenant. That Jesus goes on and he says to Peter that, Peter, you're going to die. And here's how you're going to die. Can you imagine? You think this is a pep talk. Jesus is restoring me. Yes, I love you, Lord. Okay, now you want me to take responsibility for what you started? I'm going to die? What kind of thing are you telling me right now? And you know what Peter does? In that moment, he looks around and he says to Jesus, well, what about John? Because the disciple John is standing there by them. He's like, so you're telling me this is the price that I've got to pay? This is the sacrifice that I've got to make in order to fulfill the journey that you want me to take, the purpose that you have for me? These are the things that I have to do, and this is the way it's going to end out. What about John? What about him? And you know what? Jesus looks at him. Jesus, being King of Kings and Lord of Lords, being the God of unconditional love, the giver of grace and mercy, looks at Peter and he says, what's it to you? That's what he said. What's it to you? John has his journey. You have your journey. And John's got to do his own thing over here. Don't be focused on what John's doing. Oh, look at that hypocrite. You should see the way that he acts when he's not in church. Oh, look at that guy over there. You know what? What about him? That's not fair that all that stuff's going on in his life. And he's gotten, healing and favor and mercy and all these. And I just feel like I'm suffering over here. And, what about that person over there and what they're going through and they're struggling? And so you start comparing everybody's journeys, right? And Jesus says, what's it to you? You know what he follows that with? You follow me. You follow me. This isn't about Bill following me. This isn't about William following me. This isn't about Karen following me. This is about what you're doing in your business. This is about you following me. You let their business be their business, their salvation be their salvation, and you focus on yours. And guess what? If you focus on what I've called you to do, no matter what it may appear to be, you're going to be successful in the end. Do you love me? All too often, we've received the gift, but we don't grow in the gift because we're too focused on everybody else's journey in life. Now, this isn't to say there aren't times where there should be accountability in life. The Bible gives us scriptures for that, but our primary focus should always be on ourselves. Number 5, quickly get serious. Everybody say, get serious. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, Paul says. With fear and trembling. Get serious about this thing. Because here's 2 things can happen. Number 1, you can start working out the gift that you've been given, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I got a scripture memorized. I can tell you the address to what that is. John 3:16. You want to test me? For God so loved the world. Yeah, I know that one. Right? I go to church. Yeah, I started going to church. I go once a month. You probably do what? Christmas and Easter? Yeah. You wouldn't believe how much I'm growing in my relationship. You should see how much change I've had in my life. All these good things are going on. And I know this sounds silly, but the reality is, as soon as you start coming to church, as soon as you start working it out, if you're not careful, there's a pride that can develop inside of you. All of a sudden, you know what, I'm getting a little bit better. And if we're not careful, we think that we're better than somebody else, when really, it's just growing in relationship with Jesus. And the last thing that we want to do is get to that place in the life, somebody they start hitting the elliptical and working it out. They start hitting the weights and working it out, and then you see them young guys, and they're in the gym and they're looking at the mirrors and they're like, whoa. Yeah, you guys, like look at me. There's got to be somebody around here that sees, what's going on in my life. The good things that are happening, you begin to take pride, and like there's no fear and trembling in what this is, and you're going to get caught up yourself, and pride comes before destruction and haughtiness before the fall, because you're not walking this thing out in humility. Fear and trembling. And then to think that it says that God is working in you. To me, that's the most amazing thing. Like the God of all creation, of all of this, is working inside of me. Like that is mind-blowing to me. Like he created all of these things and every individual, and yet he has time to work inside of me? Of me, who am I? Who is he to work inside of little old me? Who am I for him to be concerned about what's going on in here? I mean, and if Jesus is working inside of me, if the God of all creation is trying to work something in me, then shouldn't I take this thing a little more serious? Like I've got the greatest personal trainer in the world standing by my side. And so do I just let him stand there while I look at the gift in the box? Do a couple strokes and flex in the mirror? Look at how good I am? Or do I understand like he's here with me for life? And he wants me to know him in a more personal way. Do I want to hang by a thread? Do I want to just get by in life? Or do I want what Jesus said I can have, the abundant life? Am I working it out to the best of my ability? Number 6, finally, verse 13, for it is God who works in you both to will and to do. Everybody say to do, for his good pleasure. I want to say this, spiritual growth, like for all of this, you've got to understand, I can get the gift of an elliptical. I'm not going to get skinny by accident. Oh, I tripped over it. The wheels started turning. My legs were moving, and I couldn't stop the thing. And then I fell off, and, I got like 2 strokes in. And I do that about 10 times a day. I'm starting to burn some, it's not spiritual growth. Growth, strength doesn't happen by accident. It comes from human cooperation with divine operation. Like I'm cooperating with how God is operating inside of me. He can convict me because he knows I need to work on some things, I need to grow in some areas in life, and you know what? I could choose not to cooperate and just stuff that thing down. Or I can say, you know what? I sense that conviction. I sense you working inside of me. You've been pointing out some things. I got to work on a few things. And so I know like something happened and God's saying, you know what? I need you to work on patience. Well, God, I need patience. No, patience is already inside of you, Corey. I need you to work on patience. Well, how are we going to work on patience? Oh, you'll see. So now I'm aware. You know what? God's working. I feel this conviction. I feel it's something he wants me to work on. And so I start becoming aware. And then I'm able to recognize, like when somebody cuts me off in the road, he just threw me a weight, a trial. This is part of the journey, isn't it? What am I going to do with the weight that he just handed me? Do I throw it out the window at the car that cut me off? Or do I learn what it means to start to lift that weight? And then the next time somebody does something that really frustrates me, another weight gets tossed on me, what am I going to do? Do I just let it sink and crush me? Or do I start to pick up that weight? You know that every time that I choose to cooperate with his operation, I'll pick that thing up And I might only be able to pick it up for 30 seconds and only get it halfway. But then the next time he throws the weight back on me, I'm going to get it a little bit higher. And finally, one day, I'm going to be able to lift that thing. And though it was a struggle, the next time that it happens, I'm going to lift it easier. I'm going to lift it faster. I'm going to get stronger in that area of my life. And as I'm getting stronger in that area of my life, someday somebody's going to look at me without flexing in the mirror and then say, wow, you have patience. How in the world do you have so much patience? Oh, because it's for his good pleasure. For his good pleasure. And that's what God desires for every single one of us in working it out. You've been given the gift if you've received Christ into your life. The question is, are you working it out? He didn't give it to you for it to collect dust and for you to hang worldly things on it, but for you to grow in relationship with him so that you can see the fullness of the benefits that he's set before you. And once you start working it out, you have no idea where it's going to take you.